So I'm going to use an example of an unreliable source. What about if you get something that seems to say something that you agree with, and actually something that you know is factually true, but it's from a source that's very questionable? And I'll use an example. Occupy Democrats, for example, is a highly questionable source. And they publish a lot of memes. And what happens when you see that? Even though you know that whatever it says is actually accurate, the source itself is the source of other questionable stuff. What do you do about things like that?
This was probably 4 years ago. I did publish something from Occupied, whatever group
Democrats,
that is.
Yeah.
And somebody said, well, what about the information? And I said, well, the information is correct. And they said, yes, but how about the source? And I've never published anything written by them again, just because I thought, okay, I mean, on the league webpage, if I did it on my own, that's different. But if it's on the league webpage, I'm more careful because, for one thing, it says Democrats in it, and I don't want to appear that I have a bias to one party for the league. But yeah, just kind of some of those people are you just learn not to trust them.
And that's where media bias fact check can be really helpful. Marcia, did you have your hand up? And
no, I don't know, but it does make me think that I got something from a friend one time and it didn't sound right to me. So I did check it and got back to her and said, this is like an ad. This is,
right.
This is not really true. This is an ad.
Yeah, no, and that does make sense. And as Charlie's pointing out, that she tries not to share memes, no matter how entertaining they are. And I agree with that. I will occasionally do it, but I do try not to, because they can be very, the context isn't there. It's not like an article. And that's the other reason why I try and avoid sharing articles where I haven't read the article, because the headlines are usually written by somebody who didn't write the article. And the headline is there to get you to click. It's not there to get you to read. And even when reading journalism from 40 years ago, a lot of the context is in the paragraphs 4 and downward, not in the top 3 paragraphs. And so a lot of times there's information that confounds the top 3 paragraphs found later in the article. So when you correct yourself, if you post misinformation, do you pull the post off of the social media feed? Or do you go at the top? Sometimes what I'll do is I'll go, update, I made a mistake, in all caps. And then I leave the post up for a couple of days so anybody who reads me regularly sees that. So, and then I'll pull the post, because then after time, you don't know what people are going to read. Is that what other people do here too?
I put the correction up there. I think people, they remember seeing it. So they should be able to remember seeing it with a correction. So they'll hopefully remember that was wrong.
And sometimes what I do though is I will also, not only will I put an edit at the top that says edit with the correction at the top, but I also will make a comment so that anybody who's commented on the post will automatically get a notification. Unless they've turned notifications off, they get a notification that a new comment comes in. So that way I will at least have hit the people who read it enough to get to the point that they commented. Yeah. So these are all techniques for us to use. It's also techniques for us to share. And I think one of the things that he said that I think is really important, that isn't on any of the slides that I created, but is important for us to talk about, is the lack of trust and expertise. If we are posting things or we are reading things that are coming from experts and we've fact-checked the sources, one of the advantages of writing a little paragraph above whatever you're posting is that you then are putting your reputation on the line along with saying it. So not just because Catherine posted it, but because I said, this is a source I trust. this came, although this was published in 2018, there isn't anything more. So I've give additional information, which then gets the person to go in and do that. And so that's a really important practice to do once you've done your own research. Any other points about today's episode, which went very quickly, I know? You're going to hear, go ahead.
I don't know if I should bring this up, but I'm fascinated by like the QAnon who believe totally outrageous things, but don't believe actual scientific things. I don't understand that kind of thinking, and so it's just confusing to me.
Okay, so there's some very good research out there, and some very, I will look up. There's a podcast that 538.com did last year about conspiracy theories and cults, and there's a number. There was an Atlantic article that was quite good. So humans, this has to do with, remember I pointed people to the website Outsmarting Human Minds. There are videos there that are really helpful to explain how we can fool our minds, how our minds fool ourselves. And so if we get into a situation where people that we trust, for whatever reason, tell us something that they believe, and it isn't, it's congruent with our beliefs or our values, and then we end up in a situation where we get into a bubble where everything is confirming what we're being told, we can, really spin off balance. And cults are something that have always happened to humans. And it really comes from a part of our biology, which is one of the most important parts of us biologically, is the need to belong, the need to feel connected to other people. And so we can get a long way down the road in that situation. And it is inexplicable to those of us who are not in the thrall of that. But have you ever had something that you believed, that you were taught, that you believed, that you have then later found out was not true? Sure. Okay. And so when John in here was talking about having radical empathy, that to a certain extent is part of that radical empathy, is understanding that the person is surrounded in a situation where, for whatever reason, and there are many reasons, they get stuck. And a lot of times giving them facts is not going to help them, because they're not going to believe those facts. And so then you have to decide whether or not the relationship is more important than getting the person to be in the same belief part. And so that becomes a complicated dance that is more than the last 2 minutes that we have available for the conversation. But understanding how human minds work and understanding why we go to cults or conspiracy theories is an important thing, especially, for example, for people who, I'm teaching another class about racism. And in that class, we are all throwing out history that we were taught by treasured history teachers and by our parents and by our culture. And we learn more and more things about our history, which is very difficult to accept. And so, but we are open to it, and these other people may not be. So what we're going to talk about next week is Wikipedia. And using Wikipedia is, it seems kind of everybody, I mean, I use Wikipedia. I actually donate money to Wikipedia, because that's the reason there is not ads on Wikipedia, is because they're supported by donations. There is an On Being episode, On Being with Krista Tippett, with the founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, which is very entertaining to listen to. I had no idea about how Wikipedia started. He was fascinated from childhood about encyclopedias. And so it's a fascinating interview, and you can learn a lot about how it's actually done. We will learn more about using Wikipedia next week. The registration link is in the website, is in the chat program. And so why it's important to talk about Wikipedia is that a lot of people think, well, it's not, if you are going to go and check a source out and you only have one place to go, Wikipedia is better than not checking it out at all. And John goes into that in more detail. And today's episode will be on YouTube on our channel after this weekend. The slides and links, you'll get an email just like you have been getting every week as Charlie's been passing it along. If you're finding these helpful, the next 6 episodes are very interesting. We have Wikipedia, but then the final 5 episodes are about evaluating evidence and evaluating photos and videos and data and infographics, as well as some other tips about using social media. So please invite your friends and other people that you know to join us. And thank you very much for coming. And I'm going to hang out for 4 minutes, and then I have to go run another meeting in case we want to put away the chairs. So if anybody has anything else they want to share.